The pale imitation, the perimeter breach. My name is Cade. I'm a land conservation officer working the high desert stretches of the Four Corners region. It's a land of red dust, ancient mesas, and a silence so profound it feels like a physical weight on your chest. My job is routine. I check soil erosion, monitor water runoff, and ensure the boundary markers of the reservation are intact. I've lived out here for 6 years. I know the rules. You don't whistle at night. You don't look too long at the shadows between the junipers. And if you hear someone calling your name from the dark, you never, ever answer. 3 nights ago, the heat wouldn't break. The air was stagnant, smelling of baked earth and dry sage. I was in my trailer, a small silver bullet parked miles from the nearest paved road, finishing my field logs by the light of a single kerosene lamp. The first wrong thing was the dogs, or rather, the lack of them. The local strays usually howl at the moon until the early hours, a constant, chaotic chorus. But that night, they went dead silent. It was a vacuum of sound, a sudden drop in the environmental noise that made my ears ring. I leaned back in my chair, listening. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It was a soft sound, coming from the exterior wall of the trailer. It sounded like a dry branch dragging against the metal siding, but there are no trees within 50 yards of my camp. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out onto the small wooden porch. The desert was bathed in a pale, sickly moonlight that turned the red rocks into bone-gray monuments. I swept the beam along the side of the trailer. There was nothing there, just the dust. But then I saw the tracks. They started near the water tank and led directly toward my door. They looked like coyote tracks, but the proportions were skewed. The back paws were too long, and the stride was narrow, the gait of something walking on 2 legs, trying to mimic the footprint of a 4-legged animal. "Hello?" I called out. My voice felt small, swallowed instantly by the vastness of the mesa. A response came from the darkness beyond the junipers. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a howl. It was the sound of a woman laughing. It was my mother's laugh, high, melodic, and warm. But my mother passed away in a hospital in Phoenix 2 summers ago. The sound was wrong, though it was too crisp, like a recording played on a loop, lacking the natural echo of the desert. I stepped back inside and locked the deadbolt. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I sat on my bed, staring at the door, when a voice drifted through the thin aluminum walls. "Cade, it's so hot out here. Why won't you let me in? I brought the water you asked for." It was her voice. Perfect. Every inflection, every soft Arizona lilt. But as she spoke, the tone started to slip. The pitch deepened until it sounded like a man's voice, then shifted into a guttural, wet clicking sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. Then the trailer rocked. Something heavy had jumped onto the roof. The aluminum ceiling of the trailer groaned under the weight. It wasn't the weight of a person. It was heavier, more concentrated, like the pressure of a lead weight being dragged across the metal. Thud, drag, scrape. The sound moved from the back bedroom toward the kitchen area, directly above where I stood. Number 4. Number 4. Temptation. I kept my flashlight off. In the desert, light is a beacon that tells the dark exactly where to look. I reached for my service pistol, the cold steel of the grip, the only thing keeping me grounded. The air inside the trailer had turned freezing, despite the desert heat outside. I could smell it now, a stench that bypassed the nostrils and went straight to the back of the throat. It smelled like wet dog hair, rotted suet, and copper. Cade, you're breathing. So loud. The voice whispered from the ceiling. It was my own voice now. It wasn't a perfect copy. It was a hollow version of it, like my words were being spoken by someone who didn't understand what vocal cords were for. I looked up at the vent above the stove. The plastic slats were vibrating. A single drop of thick, grayish fluid fell through the vent and sizzled on the burner. It looked like saliva, but it was dark, viscous, and smelled of wood ash. Suddenly, the weight on the roof vanished. There was a heavy thud on the ground outside, followed by a sound I'll never forget, the sound of bones snapping and resetting. It was a wet, crunchy noise, like a bag of frozen celery being crushed. Whatever was out there was changing its shape, forced to shift because I wouldn't provide the template of an open door. I crept toward the small, rectangular window near the dinette. I peeled back the edge of the curtain just a fraction of an inch. The moonlight was bright enough to see the clearing. About 20 yards away, standing near my woodpile, was a figure. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, and its skin was the color of a dead fish, pale and translucent in the lunar light. It was hunched over, its arms too long for its torso, the fingers dragging in the red dust. It was wearing a coyote skin over its shoulders, but the skin looked fused to the flesh, the fur matted with that same gray fluid. The creature was looking away from me, its back rippling, as if dozens of small animals were crawling beneath its skin. Then, it turned its head. It didn't have a human face, but it was trying. It had molded the pale flesh into a rough approximation of a man's features, large, unblinking eyes, and a wide, lipless mouth. But the eyes were placed vertically, one above the other, in the center of its forehead. It saw me. The mouth opened, stretching wider than any human jaw should, revealing rows of small, needle-like teeth, stained yellow with old bile. It didn't scream. It began to mimic the sound of my trailer's engine, the low, mechanical thrum of the generator, perfectly pitched to vibrate the glass of the window. Hum, 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 hum. The vibration was so intense that my vision began to shake. I felt a warm trickle of blood run from my ear. The creature started to walk toward the window, its gait a sickening, lopsided crawl, its bones clicking with every step. Let's check the soil, Cade, it said, the words distorted by the mechanical hum. The boundary is broken. End. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The mechanical humming coming from the creature's throat was rattling the plates in my cabinets, a low-frequency assault that made my head feel like it was being squeezed in a vice. It wasn't just a sound, it was a physical force, trying to shake the sanity right out of my skull. I knew I couldn't shoot my way out of this. In the stories the old-timers told at the trading post, lead only made them angry. You didn't kill a skinwalker with a bullet. You outlasted it, or you broke its focus. I scrambled toward my field gear bag. My hands were shaking, but I found what I was looking for. A heavy bag of industrial-grade rock salt I used for soil stabilization tests, and a small jar of ceremonial ash I'd been gifted by a local rancher after helping him find a lost herd. The boundary is mine, I whispered, my own voice sounding alien to me over the creature's hum. I didn't open the door. I knew that was the trap. Instead, I went to the floor-level vents, the ones that pulled in air from beneath the trailer. I began to pour the salt and ash into the vents, letting the desert wind blow the white and gray powder out under the chassis. The humming outside stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was even worse. It was a thick, expectant quiet. Then, a sound like a heavy, wet sheet being slapped against the metal. The creature was leaning its entire body against the side of the trailer. I could feel the heat radiating through the aluminum, a feverish, sickly warmth that felt like it was coming from a dying animal. Cade, why are you hiding in the dust? The voice was a perfect, chilling replica of the ranger who had trained me. The soil. The is sick. We need to bleed it. The. The trailer began to tilt. The creature was lifting the back end, the steel frame groaning as the stabilizers were pulled from the soft desert dirt. My coffee mug slid off the table and shattered. I grabbed onto the kitchen counter, my knuckles white, as the floor beneath me became a steep incline. I reached for my flare gun. I didn't aim for the window. I aimed for the roof vent, the one I'd seen the grayish saliva drip through. I pulled the trigger. The flare erupted inside the narrow duct, a blinding flash of phosphorus light and heat. The scream that came from the roof wasn't human, and it wasn't an animal. It was the sound of 1,000 dry branches snapping at once, a jagged, splintering shriek that tore through the air. The trailer slammed back down onto its jacks with a bone-jarring thud. I heard the sound of the creature scrambling away, its heavy, uneven footsteps receding into the brush. But it wasn't running in fear, it was circling. I could hear it moving through the junipers, snapping thick limbs as it went, its voice shifting through every person I'd ever met in the four corners, the postmaster, the rancher, the waitress at the diner. 1 more mile. Cade. Cade. The voices whispered in a discordant choir. 1 more mile until the skin fits. Dot. F. 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 Dot. F. Dot. F. 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 Then I heard a new sound. It was the sound of my truck's engine starting up, but my keys were still hanging on the hook by the door. The sound of my truck's engine idling was a low, mechanical growl that vibrated through the trailer's floorboards. I knew that engine. I knew the specific rattle of the loose heat shield and the slight skip in the belt. It was mine. But the keys were still dangling right in front of me, swaying gently on the brass hook. I crept to the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the heavy steel latch. I didn't open it. I just looked through the narrow, vertical pane of glass embedded in the door. The truck's headlights were on, cutting two blinding tunnels of white light through the dust. Standing in the glare, silhouetted against the high beams, was a man. He was wearing my canvas field jacket. He had my posture, the slight slouch from years of leaning over surveying equipment. He even reached up and adjusted his hat with the exact same three-fingered tug I used every time the wind picked up. The man turned around. The face was mine, but it was like a clay mask that hadn't quite dried. The skin was too smooth, lacking the crow's feet around the eyes, and the scar on my chin, and the eyes. They didn't have pupils. They were just two flat, amber discs that reflected the headlights like a cat's. "Cade," the thing said. Its mouth didn't move in sync with the words. The sound was projected, coming from the truck's external speakers. I found the error in the logs. You forgot to count yourself. The thing walked to the driver's side door, climbed in, and slammed the door. The truck shifted into gear, the gravel crunching under the tires as it began to pull away, heading north toward the main highway, toward the town, toward my home, toward my life. I stood there, paralyzed, watching my own taillights disappear into the black maw of the canyon. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no insects, just the sound of my own shallow, panicked breathing. I stayed in that trailer until the sun finally bled over the edge of the mesa, turning the dust into a sea of fire. I walked out into the morning light, my pistol still heavy in my hand. I walked to the spot where the truck had been idling. The dirt was churned up, but there were no tire tracks, no oil drips, no sign that a 3-ton vehicle had ever been sitting there. Instead, there was only a single set of footprints. They started as coyote paws, deep and frantic, and gradually transitioned into the shape of a man's boot. But where the heel should have been, there was a long, jagged claw mark that dragged deep into the silt. I walked back to the trailer and reached for my satellite phone to call the main office. I needed to tell them I was coming in. I needed to tell them to watch out for me. But when I picked up the receiver, there was already a dial tone, and then a voice. "Dispatcher here. Hey, Cade. We just saw you pull into the station. You're early. Why are you calling from the field? You're standing right in front of me." End quote. I looked at the receiver. Then I looked at my own hands. The skin felt tight. Too tight. It felt like it was being pulled over a frame that didn't belong to me. I tried to speak, but the only sound that came out was the low, rhythmic hum of a generator. "I'm still out here, I think. I'm sitting in the dirt, watching the sun climb higher. I can see the town in the distance, a small cluster of lights and lives. And somewhere in that town, I'm walking into a diner, sitting at my usual table, and ordering a coffee I'll never drink. If you're driving through the four corners and you see me on the side of the road, marking the soil, don't stop. Don't wave. And for God's sake, don't ask me for the time. Because the man you're looking at isn't the one who's talking to you.